Okay, today we're talking about how video games have become more culturally accepted, which is obviously a good thing, right? Believe it or not, there was a time when kids at school or wherever would get made fun of or even just flat out beaten up if it was found out that they liked video games. It's crazy to think, but that's how things used to be. I remember when I was in seventh grade. That's right, seventh grade. So we were all what, like 12 years old then? And certain kids would make fun of other kids for liking Pokemon because they said it was too kiddish, babyish, or whatever. Compare that to nowadays when you can see a group of fully grown men who didn't bring any kids with them to go see Detective Pikachu and nobody bats an eye at it. How times have changed. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, but I think one of the biggest reasons is that all these kids who grew up playing video games, like myself, are now adults, and a lot of us have kids, and so we teach our kids that it's okay to play games. It's not something to be made fun of or feel ashamed of or whatever. They're fun, and we still play them ourselves. So not only do we still play video games, but we play them with our kids, and in general, there's just a lot more playing video games going on, which is obviously great. As a result, it should come as no surprise that because there's so much more demand for video games, the industry has grown much bigger overall. More demand for video games, more video games being made, therefore it's more in the public eye, etc., etc. And not only has it translated to video games, but it's translated to other things that used to be considered nerd culture, like Marvel movies, and I mean, just look at how big those Marvel movies are. They're some of the best-selling movies there are. And obviously it's not just Marvel movies, but just superhero movies in general. You know, superhero movies used to be this really novel thing. I remember back when the first Spider-Man movie came out, you know, the one with Tobey Maguire? I remember when that movie came out, it was like this big deal because it was this super unique, novel thing. And now, superhero movies, that's just what movies are. I mean, you go to the movie theater at pretty much any given time, and there's going to be at least one superhero movie playing there. And I think what it really comes down to is that this whole idea of nerd culture isn't a thing anymore. It's just there's no divide, it's just how people are. For the most part, there are still people, of course, who think that stuff like video games and, superheroes and stuff like that are only for kids. And, I remember growing up, there'd be certain kids whose parents would train them to think this way. Like, hey, once you're not a kid anymore, you got to get rid of all this crap. You can't be liking this anymore. They made them feel like there was something wrong with them for liking that. And so I know these kids who they loved video games growing up, and then once they got older, they didn't like them anymore all of a sudden. I'm like, I don't think so. I think you still like them. You just you think it's like the adult thing to do to not like them anymore. Now, if you know somebody like that, I want you to do me a favor. And what that is to just give them one smack across one side of the face and then another smack across the other side of the face and say, play video games. I know you still like them. Not that there's anything wrong with not liking video games, not at all. I mean, people can like whatever they want. I'm just saying, if somebody actually likes them but is not playing them because they think there's something wrong with liking it, then that's what's messed up. However, it's not too big of a concern because I think what's going to happen is there's just going to be less and less of this idea as the years go on about video games not being cool or only for kids or whatever. And so, these people are just going to get phased out who think like that because it's like I said, people now, they teach their kids because they played video games as kids that it's okay for their own kids to be playing games and play them even when they get older. Oh, and here's a fun thought I just had. So you know how retirement homes are thought of as these like really sad, depressing places? Well, just think of the year when, a lot of the people who are in these retirement homes are people who grew up playing video games. So you know what those retirement homes are going to be loaded with? That's right, tons of video games. And so those are going to be some of the most fun, cool, happy places to hang out there's going to be. Okay, I think another reason why video games are becoming more culturally accepted is because they're starting to resemble other forms of media that are already more culturally accepted. With the biggest thing being movies. I mean, games have become a lot more cinematic. I was just talking about The Last of Us the other day. That's a great example. I will say, though, that I think a lot of the commercials that you see for video games don't always do the best job of representing video games well. I think we've still got some progress to make there, but hopefully that will come. Also, another thing is that video games are a much more viable career option now than they ever have been before. And I'm not just talking about making video games, I'm talking about playing video games. I mean, esports are huge. You can make a ton of money doing esports. And then, of course, there's, people just streaming gameplay on Twitch and YouTubers like myself. Obviously, I'm not making any money now, but maybe one day. But when it comes to making games, there's also a lot more opportunity now than there ever has been before. So not only is the mainstream gaming industry a lot bigger overall, which means more jobs and more opportunities to make games, but the indie scene has made, the ability to make games as accessible as it's ever been. And if there's anything that gains respect in the public eye, it's money. If you can make money off something enough different ways, then, it's just going to start getting more respect and become more culturally accepted. And that's exactly what's happening with video games. All right, so those are my thoughts on all of this, but of course I want to hear what your thoughts are. What have you noticed? What are the differences you've noticed between now and how things used to be when you were younger? I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure some of you might have some fun stories about that too, which I'd also like to hear. So, of course, leave those comments down below. As always, I will see ya in the next video.